The diplomatic hall of the Veyron capital shimmered with polished crystal walls, glowing softly in shades of blue and silver. It was a place meant to impress and intimidate, showing both the elegance and the power of the alien empire. Rows of tall alien guards stood in silence, their golden armor reflecting the hall lights. Between them, human officers from Earth's delegation walked carefully, aware they were surrounded by beings far taller and stronger than themselves. Among them was Ryan, a soldier who had grown used to being out of place. He was not a diplomat, not a scientist, but a simple security man assigned to protect the human envoys. His armor was plain compared to the shining plates of the Veyron guards, yet he stood straight, his eyes always scanning for danger. He knew he was only here to keep trouble away, though in truth he doubted trouble would dare appear in the very heart of the alien empire. The hall soon filled with voices. Representatives from Earth spoke with practiced politeness while the Veyron nobles responded with their deep, echoing tones. The subject of the talks was fragile peace. Humans had been growing fast, spreading ships into new systems, and the Veyron Empire had taken notice. Skirmishes had already happened on the border. Now both sides tried to turn conflict into understanding. At the center of the hall stood the Veyron throne, tall and radiant, where Queen Marielle sat with calm dignity. Beside her stood her daughter, Princess Elira, a younger figure draped in silver robes. Unlike most Veyrons who were cautious and cold toward humans, Elira's eyes showed curiosity. She listened closely to every word, her gaze sometimes drifting toward the human delegation. Ryan noticed her, though he quickly looked away. She was not his concern. His task was simple: protect the envoys, observe the crowd, watch for signs of danger. For most of the gathering, nothing unusual happened. Speeches were given, promises were made, and the air was filled with a cautious hope. Then, as a group of nobles moved closer to the humans, Ryan's instincts sharpened. Something was off. One noble's hand moved slightly beneath his robe. Ryan's eyes narrowed. The motion was small, easy to miss, but he had seen it before in battle zones. A hand reaching for a hidden weapon. The hall was filled with words, yet for Ryan the sound vanished. His body moved before his mind finished the thought. A flash of light burst from the noble's sleeve. An energy bolt shot across the hall, aimed straight at Princess Elira, who had stepped forward at that moment. Without thinking, Ryan threw himself into the line of fire. The bolt slammed into his chest armor with a crackling force that sent him staggering. Heat spread across his ribs and sparks flew from his armor's surface. Pain flared, but he stayed upright, shielding the princess with his body. Gasps echoed across the hall. Veyron guards rushed forward, tackling the attacker, while others formed a shield around the queen. But Elira remained frozen, staring at the human who had just taken the attack meant for her. Ryan's breathing was rough, but he straightened, keeping his stance solid in front of her. He glanced back only once, making sure she was unhurt. Then he faced forward again, his weapon drawn, ready for another strike. The queen rose from her throne, her voice sharp as steel. "Who dares break sacred peace within this hall?" The attacker was dragged forward, his robe torn away, revealing more hidden weapons. His eyes burned with defiance, shouting words about betrayal and weakness, but Ryan barely heard them. His chest still ached where the blast had hit, though his armor had absorbed most of the force. Princess Elira finally moved, stepping around him with wide eyes. You saved me." Ryan shook his head slightly. "Just did what anyone would do," he said, though his voice was strained. "Not anyone," she whispered. But he did not answer. The Veyron guards finished clearing the hall, pulling away the conspirators who had hidden among the nobles. It became clear the attack was not from one, but from a small group working together. The peace summit had almost been turned into blood. The queen ordered silence, her gaze fierce as it fell on Ryan. "Human soldier," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You placed yourself before my daughter without hesitation. Why?" Ryan met her eyes, though every instinct told him to look down. "Because she was in danger. My duty is to protect. That is all," the hall murmured. Among Veyrons, such words were strange. Sacrifice was usually reserved for bloodkin, not strangers and certainly not for members of another species. Yet this human had acted faster than anyone else, even faster than the princess's own guards. Queen Marielle studied him with a gaze both piercing and thoughtful. Then she turned to the crowd. "The talks will continue another time. For now, this council is ended." The hall emptied under her command, though whispers lingered. The human soldier who had thrown himself into harm's way was already becoming a story. Later, when the envoys were escorted to safer quarters, Ryan remained behind at the Queen's order. He stood in the palace corridor waiting, his armor scorched but still functional. He expected anger, perhaps even punishment for stepping out of his role. Instead, the princess approached, her expression full of questions. "You were hurt because of me," Elira said softly. "I am fine," Ryan replied. "Armor did its job. You are safe. That is what matters." Her eyes searched his face as if trying to understand something hidden. "Why do you value my safety over your own?" He shrugged. "That is what humans do. We protect." Elira fell silent, her mind stirring with thoughts she had never faced before. For her, protection was given by command or loyalty to blood, but this man had no tie to her. No command from his leaders to throw himself in front of her. He simply chose it. From a distance, Queen Mariel watched this exchange. She saw her daughter's confusion, and she saw the calm strength in the human's answer. To her, it was both strange and fascinating. The idea that someone would place themselves at risk for another without reward or blood tie was something her people rarely practiced. The Queen turned to her council, speaking in a low tone. "Keep him close. I wish to learn more of this human." And so the event that was meant to destroy peace instead planted a seed of change. A single act of instinct, a human shielding a princess with nothing but his body and will, had caught the eye of an empire's ruler. Rian did not know what this meant yet. To him, it was simply duty. But to the Veyran court, it was something entirely new, something that could not be ignored. The night ended with the city buzzing in whispers. Some called him reckless, others called him brave, but all agreed on one thing. Humanity had shown something the Veyrans had never expected. And in the heart of the palace, Queen Mariel thought carefully. She had seen many warriors, many leaders, many advisors, but none had done what this one soldier had done today. He had shielded her daughter not with calculation, but with instinct, as if her life was as valuable as his own. She would not forget that. The palace of Veyra stood like a mountain of light and stone, its towers stretching high above the city. For most humans, walking its vast halls felt like stepping into another world. For Ryan, the human soldier who had shielded Princess Elira, only a day before, it was both impressive and unsettling. He was not used to such wealth or silence. Every sound of his boots against the smooth floor echoed like a drum. He expected to be sent back to the human quarters after the attack at the summit, but instead he was ordered to stay in the palace. Guards led him through long corridors, past walls engraved with the history of the empire, until he reached a chamber filled with white light. There, sitting on a throne carved from crystal, was Queen Mariel herself. Rian stood straight as her eyes met his. They were sharp, calm, and full of hidden weight. She looked not only at him but into him, as if searching for the answer to a question no one had asked. "You are the human soldier who threw himself in front of my daughter," the Queen said. Her voice was smooth yet carried the strength of command. "Yes, Your Majesty," Ryan answered, his tone firm but respectful. "Why?" she asked again, just as she had in the hall. "Why did you do it? You owe us nothing. You serve your people, not mine. So why risk your life for her?" Rian thought for a moment before speaking. "Because she was in danger. I was near. I could stop it. So I did." It was simple. Mariel leaned back on her throne, her expression unreadable. "Simple. You call throwing away your life simple." "I did not throw it away," Ryan replied. "I was trained to protect. If someone is in danger, I act. That is what I do." The Queen's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "Among my people, such words are not common. A Veyran would protect kin, blood, and sworn oath, but to leap before danger for one who is neither family nor sworn? That is rare, perhaps foolish. And yet you did it without hesitation." Ryan stayed silent. He had nothing else to add. To him, it was no great mystery. He had acted on instinct, but he realized then that to the Veyrans his instinct was strange. Mariel raised her hand, and the guard stepped aside. "You will remain in the palace for now. I would know more of this human courage." Until I decide otherwise, you belong here. Ryan's brows furrowed slightly. With respect, my orders are to guard the human envoys. They may need me. They will be safe, Marielle said, her voice final. But my daughter was nearly killed. You saved her when others failed. For that I will keep you near. Think of it not as a command but as an honor. He could not refuse. To argue further would mean disrespect. So he bowed his head slightly. As you wish, Majesty. From that day, Ryan's life changed. Instead of standing among the human soldiers, he found himself within the palace walls, watched closely by Veyran guards and nobles. Some looked at him with open curiosity, others with suspicion. The story of the summit had already spread, and whispers followed him wherever he walked. Princess Illyra, however, greeted him with open warmth. She often sought him out, asking questions about Earth, about human customs, and about his training. At first, Ryan answered only out of politeness, but he soon noticed her genuine interest. Unlike many nobles who saw humans as lesser, Illyra listened to every word as if each answer revealed something important. One evening, they walked together in the palace gardens, a place of towering plants that glowed softly in the night. Illyra moved gracefully among the paths, her silver robes brushing against the glowing leaves. Ryan walked a step behind, his armor faintly scratched from the blast he had taken. You truly thought nothing of yourself when you leapt in front of me? Illyra asked, her voice gentle. Ryan shrugged. There was no time to think. I saw danger. You were in the way. I could stop it. So I did. Illyra tilted her head. Among my people, such action is rare. We are taught that survival comes first. Even my guards would have hesitated. That is the difference, Ryan said. Humans are taught to protect each other, even strangers. It is not always about survival. Sometimes it is about duty. Sometimes it is simply about what is right. She fell silent, considering his words. To her it was both strange and fascinating, but not all were pleased. Among the Queen's council, voices rose in private chambers. Some nobles whispered that the human was dangerous, that his influence over the princess could turn her away from tradition. Others argued that his presence was useful, for he had proven himself strong and loyal even to those not his own. Queen Marielle listened to all, but her thoughts were her own. She summoned Rian again and placed him through small tests. At first, she asked him to train alongside her guards, watching how he fought. He was smaller than them, weaker in pure strength, yet he moved with quick precision. He struck not with power but with skill, surprising even seasoned warriors. Next, she placed him in court disputes, where minor nobles argued over trade and land. She asked him to listen and give judgment. Rian protested that he was no judge, but Marielle insisted. He listened carefully, then spoke with simple fairness. His decisions were direct, lacking the twisting words of politics. Some nobles were angered, but others respected the clarity. Marielle began to see a pattern. This human did not act for gain or pride. He acted out of a sense of right and wrong that seemed woven into his nature. It was unlike her own people, who weighed everything against power and advantage. Late one night, Marielle stood in her private chamber, gazing out over the glowing city. Her daughter entered quietly, her steps soft. You watch him too closely, mother, Illyra said. He is not a tool to be tested. He is a man. Marielle turned. And what do you see in him, daughter? Illyra's eyes shone. I see someone who protects without question, someone who values others as much as himself. That is rare. He makes me wonder if we could learn from his kind. The Queen's face softened, though only slightly. Perhaps. But remember, he is still human, and humans are ambitious. We must be careful. Even as she spoke, Marielle could not deny her own curiosity. She had ruled an empire built on order and strength, yet this single human soldier had shaken her certainty. His actions were not those of a strategist or a schemer. They were pure instinct, pure conviction. That was something she had rarely seen, even among her most loyal subjects. The following day, Marielle called Rian once more. This time she asked him nothing about battle or law. Instead, She asked about Earth itself. He spoke of vast oceans, green fields, and skies filled with stars. He told her about families living in small homes, about soldiers standing guard in distant outposts, about the way humans looked out for each other in times of crisis. Marielle listened closely. Each word painted a picture of a people who were fragile yet strong in spirit. She began to understand why they spread so quickly across the stars. Not because they were the strongest, but because they carried something within that no weapon could create. As days passed, Ryan's presence became part of palace life. He stood in the halls, walked in the gardens, and trained with the guards. Yet he remained the same simple man, never asking for reward or favor. And though he did not seek it, the queen's gaze followed him often. She told herself it was curiosity, nothing more. She wanted to understand what made this human different. But deep inside, she knew it was more than that. She had ruled many years and seen countless warriors, but never before had she seen one throw himself before death for another without hesitation. That act still echoed in her mind. In the quiet of her chamber, she whispered to herself, "This human will not leave so easily. I will not let him go." She did not yet know what role he would play, but she knew one thing with certainty. The Empire needed to understand this strange strength, and she would be the one to uncover it. The palace of Vera was no longer unfamiliar to Rian. Days had turned into weeks since the attack at the summit, and he had grown used to the shining halls, the quiet gardens, and the constant presence of watchful Veyran guards. Yet no matter how much he walked through the great corridors, he still felt the weight of being an outsider. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some looked with interest, some with suspicion, and some with clear disapproval. Whispers trailed behind him, for the story of the human soldier who had shielded Princess Elira had spread beyond the palace walls into the city itself. To many, it was a tale of bravery. To others, it was a sign of danger. Queen Marielle kept him close, though her reasons were her own. At times, she asked him questions about human life, about war, and about duty. At other times, she placed him into tasks that seemed more like tests than duties. One morning, he was ordered to join the palace guard in their training yard. The Veyran guard stood tall, their armor gleaming in the sunlight. Each one was nearly a head taller than Ryan, their bodies built with natural strength. They carried heavy spears and swords designed for their size. To them, the human looked small and unremarkable. Their captain, a stern warrior named Darek, gave Ryan a hard look. "So this is the human the queen favors. Let us see if his courage matches his tale." Rian nodded calmly. He had no need to prove himself, yet he would not dishonor the queen's command. He stepped into the circle where the guards trained. The first duel began. A Veyran soldier charged forward with heavy steps, swinging his spear with wide arcs. Ryan moved quickly, sidestepping the strike and closing the distance. His smaller blade darted forward, tapping the guard's armor before he slipped away again. The watching soldiers murmured. A second guard entered, stronger and faster, but Ryan's movements remained sharp. He used speed and precision rather than brute strength. He could not match their power, but he turned their strength against them, letting them overextend, then striking when they faltered. After several rounds, Darek raised his hand. Enough. His eyes narrowed, but there was a spark of respect within them. "You fight with skill, human. Not strength, but skill. I will not call it luck." Ryan gave a simple nod. "Thank you." The queen had watched from above, hidden behind the high balcony. She saw how her guards struggled to pin down a man smaller and weaker, yet determined. Her thoughts grew deeper. This human did not rely on what he lacked. He relied on what he had. Later that day, Rian was brought into the council chamber. A dispute was being heard between two nobles over trade rights along a border colony. Queen Marielle had summoned him to stand beside her. When the nobles finished their loud arguments, Marielle turned her gaze toward Rian. "Tell me, human soldier, who is right?" Rian was taken aback. "Majesty, I am no judge." "Still," she replied, "I wish to hear your view." The chamber fell silent. The nobles glared at him, angered that a human soldier was asked to speak. Ryan listened again to their arguments, then spoke slowly. "One wants more profit, the other wants more control. Neither thinks of the people who live there. If trade serves the people, let it flow. If control helps the people, let it stay. Their voices should matter first, not only the nobles. Murmurs filled the hall. The nobles bristled, ready to argue, but Queen Marielle lifted her hand for silence. Her eyes lingered on Rian, thoughtful. His words were simple, yet they cut through layers of pride and politics. When the council ended, Marielle kept him behind. You speak with fairness, but you do not fear their anger. Why? Ryan answered plainly. Because truth is truth, no matter who hears it. Her lips curved faintly. It was not quite a smile, but it showed her interest. Princess Elira met him later in the gardens, her eyes bright with curiosity. You spoke before nobles as if you were their equal, she said. I spoke as if the people mattered, Ryan corrected. Elira laughed softly. You do not realize how different you are. Among my people, truth is weighed against power, but you speak it as if power does not exist. Ryan looked at her. Maybe that is why humans survive even when weaker. We fight for each other, not just for power. Her laughter faded, replaced by thought. She began to see the depth in his words, yet not all welcomed this change. In the dark halls of the palace, nobles gathered in secret. They spoke with sharp voices, their anger rising. This human grows too bold, one hissed. He speaks in our council as if he belongs there. The queen favors him, another said, and the princess listens to him. If this continues, our traditions will be weakened. We cannot allow it. Plans began to stir among them. They would not strike openly, but they would watch for a chance to remove the human influence from the royal house. Unaware of these plots, Ryan continued his days in quiet duty. He trained, he observed, and he spoke with Elira when she sought him. Over time, their bond grew stronger. She began to trust his words, not only because of what he had done, but because of how he carried himself. He did not seek power or favor. He was simply honest. One evening, as the stars glowed above the city, Elira walked with him on the palace terrace. Do you miss your home? She asked. Yes, Rian said simply. But duty keeps me here. Home is far, but I serve where I am needed. She looked at him with quiet respect. You humans are strange. My people see duty as chains, but you speak of it as if it gives you freedom. He nodded. Because it gives purpose. Without purpose, life is only survival. With purpose, even sacrifice has meaning. Her heart stirred at his words. She had grown up among nobles who cared for wealth and position, but here was a man who found strength in something greater. Far across the terrace, Queen Marielle watched them. Her daughter's interest in the human was clear, and Marielle felt a mix of curiosity and caution. She did not yet know if this bond would strengthen the empire or endanger it. But she knew one thing. The human was no longer just a guard. He had become a figure her people whispered about, and his presence was beginning to shape the royal house itself. That night, Marielle spoke with her advisors. Some demanded Rian be removed, fearing his influence. Others urged her to keep him, believing he brought new strength. Marielle listened, then silenced them all. I will decide. For now, the human stays. He has shown me things even my wisest nobles have not. I will not let fear guide me. Her decision was final, yet she knew the clash of cultures was only beginning. For Ryan, life in the palace remained filled with quiet challenges. For Elira, his words became seeds of new thought, and for Marielle, the human soldier had become more than a curiosity. He was a mirror that showed her empire something it had forgotten. In the shadows, however, the nobles who opposed him sharpened their plans. They would wait for their moment. The palace of Vera grew tense in the weeks after Ryan's presence became more known. Rumors spread beyond the marble halls into the streets of the city. Some citizens whispered of the human who saved the princess, calling him a hero of courage. Others muttered with suspicion, saying no alien should be trusted so close to the throne. Rian ignored the whispers. He did not care for titles or fame. His days were filled with training, patrolling the palace and answering the queen's questions when summoned. Yet he felt the air grow heavier. Even the guards looked over their shoulders more often, as if expecting danger. One morning, Captain Derek of the palace guard approached Ryan in the training yard. His face was stern, his tone low. There are whispers of something larger than the attack at the summit. The conspirators we caught were not acting alone. Ryan tightened the strap of his armor. You mean there are more of them inside the palace? Derek gave a slow nod. It is possible. We search, but shadows hide well in these halls. That same day, Queen Marielle called her council together. The chamber was filled with nobles. their voices loud and clashing. Some argued for stronger security, others for silencing anyone who dared question the throne. Marielle listened without showing her thoughts, her gaze steady as stone. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. This empire will not be ruled by fear, but I will not ignore danger. There will be no second attack. Her eyes turned briefly toward Ryan, and though she said nothing, her meaning was clear. She trusted his instincts. Ryan took the task seriously. He began to move quietly through the palace, studying places most ignored. He watched the servants, the guards, even the lesser nobles. He was not Veyron, but he knew the signs of betrayal. A nervous glance, a whispered word, a hand too often near a hidden pocket. One night, while walking the lower corridors, he found something strange. A storage room door was slightly open. Inside, faint light flickered. He stepped in quietly, hand on his weapon. At the back of the room, 3 figures stood around a table, speaking in hushed voices. On the table lay maps of the palace and marks around the throne chamber. Ryan moved before they noticed him. He knocked one aside with his shoulder and seized the second by the wrist, slamming him against the wall. The third tried to run, but Ryan caught his leg and dragged him down. By the time guards arrived, the conspirators were bound. Queen Marielle was informed, and the maps were brought before her. She studied them with cold anger. They were planning another strike, bold enough to hide beneath my roof. The council grew restless when the news spread. Fear and anger mixed in their voices. Some nobles shouted that the human had been useful in finding the plot, while others accused him of drawing danger closer. Princess Elira defended him openly. If not for Ryan, we would not have discovered this. He sees what we do not. Marielle said nothing in the council, but her eyes held quiet approval when they met Ryan's. Days passed, and the palace prepared for a great ceremony meant to show strength to the empire. Nobles from many systems were to gather, and Marielle wanted to prove that the throne remained unshaken. On the morning of the ceremony, the palace gleamed with banners and music. The great hall filled with hundreds of nobles, soldiers, and envoys. Queen Marielle entered with her daughter at her side, her presence commanding silence. Ryan stood among the guards at the edge of the throne, his hand never far from his weapon. His eyes moved constantly, watching every face, every motion. He felt unease deep in his chest, the kind that came before battle. The ceremony began with speeches of loyalty and strength. Yet even as words flowed, Ryan noticed small details. A servant moving too close to the queen's dais. A guard whose armor strap was fastened differently than the rest. Another figure shifting slowly toward the crowd of envoys. His instincts screamed warning. The first strike came like lightning. A hidden blade flashed from the servant's sleeve, aimed toward the queen. Before it could strike, Ryan leapt forward, knocking the attacker down. At the same moment, the false guard drew an energy weapon and fired into the crowd. Chaos erupted. Real guards rushed in, but more attackers revealed themselves, hidden among the ceremony guests. Shouts, screams, and blasts of light filled the chamber. Ryan drew his weapon and fought through the chaos. His movements were sharp, direct, without waste. He struck one attacker across the chest, then turned to block a strike meant for Princess Elira. She stood frozen, her eyes wide with fear, until he pulled her behind the throne's shield wall. "Stay here," he said firmly. "But you," she began. "No time. Stay," he ordered, then moved back into the fight. Queen Marielle herself rose, her voice thundering above the noise. "Stand for your empire!" Her guards rallied, their golden armor shining as they pushed back against the rebels. Yet the attack was fierce, and the hall shook with the clash. Ryan fought at the queen's side, cutting down one foe after another. His chest burned with exhaustion, but he refused to stop. When another blast streaked toward Marielle, he threw himself into its path once again, his armor flaring with sparks as it absorbed the force. Pain seared through him, but he stayed upright. The queen turned, her eyes locking on him. In that moment, she saw not a soldier, not a human, but a shield that would not break. With renewed strength, the guards pressed forward. One by one, the attackers were struck down or captured. The hall slowly grew quiet again, though smoke and ruin marked where the battle had raged. Ryan leaned against a pillar, his breathing heavy. Blood stained his side where the blast had broken through his armor, yet he stood, refusing to fall. Princess Elira rushed to him, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. "You are hurt again. Why must you always put yourself in the fire?" He gave a tired smile. Because someone must. Queen Marielle stepped closer, her face unreadable. For a long moment she studied him, then spoke with a voice filled with iron. Twice you have stood between death and my family. Twice you have saved what even my guards failed to protect. Tell me, human, why do you give so much when you owe us nothing? Ryan straightened despite his wound. Because life has worth no matter the crown or title. Because protecting others is not about who they are, but about what is right. The hall was silent. Nobles stared, some with awe, some with disbelief. Marielle's eyes softened for the briefest instant, though her tone remained steady. You are unlike any I have known. The attackers were dragged away, their plot broken. The Queen dismissed the council, ordering new security measures and deeper searches. But in her mind, one truth rang louder than any law. The Empire had been saved not by power or wealth, but by the courage of a single human soldier. That night, in the quiet of her chamber, Marielle stood at the window overlooking the glowing city. Her daughter entered, her face still pale from the attack. Mother, Elira whispered, he saved us both again. What will you do with him? Marielle's gaze stayed on the stars. He is no longer only a guard. He is proof of a strength we do not understand, and I will not let him leave so easily. Far below in the healing wing of the palace, Ryan rested. His wounds were painful, but his spirit was calm. He had done his duty. Yet he did not know what awaited him. The Queen's mind was set. She would not let go of the shield who had stood before her and her daughter, not once, but twice. The palace was quiet now. The chaos of the attacks long past. Guards patrolled as usual. Nobles whispered in private corners, and the citizens of the city looked to the throne with renewed respect. Yet within the walls something had changed. The presence of a human soldier who had risked his life twice for the royal family now shaped the balance of power and trust in ways no one could ignore. Rian sat quietly in the corner of the royal garden, the glow of the city lights reflecting off the soft leaves around him. His armor had been repaired, but the aches from battle lingered. He had done his duty, as he always did. That was enough for him. Yet he sensed something in the air that made him uneasy. Princess Elira approached, moving with her usual quiet grace. Her eyes were serious, but they held warmth. She had come to care for him not just as a protector, but as a man whose presence challenged everything she had known about strength and courage. Ryan, she said softly, the Queen wishes to speak with you. He rose, nodding. Yes, Princess. The Queen's chamber was spacious and silent, the only sound the faint hum of energy from the crystal walls. Queen Marielle sat at her throne, her eyes sharp as always, yet they held something softer today. Sit, human, she said, and he obeyed. The events of the past weeks have proven something to me. You are no ordinary soldier. You are not here by accident, nor are your actions simple luck. You have shown qualities that even my best warriors lack. Rian's expression was calm. I only did what any human would do, Your Majesty. Marielle's lips curved faintly. No, Ryan, that is what makes you extraordinary. You act without calculation for your own benefit. You act for what is right. And now I must decide what your place will be in this palace. In this empire, he met her gaze without fear. I serve where needed, Majesty. My loyalty is to duty, not to titles. The Queen considered him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her voice quiet but firm. You will remain here. Not as a guest. Not as a soldier from a foreign world. You will remain as part of this palace. You will be my shield, and I will not release you from this duty. Rian blinked. Majesty, I am honored, but my duty lies with my people. I cannot abandon them. Marielle shook her head slowly. Your duty has already proven greater than loyalty to any one place. You protected my daughter, my empire, without hesitation. That shows a strength beyond borders. I cannot allow you to leave. Princess Elira stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. Mother, please. He saved us. He is brave and loyal, but he is still human. He may want to return to his own world. The Queen's eyes met her daughter's. And yet he chose to stay when asked. Twice he threw himself into danger for others, not for reward or command. That is not weakness. That is power. And it is the power this empire has lacked. Ryan stayed silent, unsure how to respond. This was not a simple order he could obey. His heart was bound to duty, yet now the Queen declared him bound to her palace, to a role he had never asked for. Marielle continued. You will not leave. You will remain as a guide, as a protector, and as an example. Your actions have already begun to change my people. I will not allow the lessons you bring to vanish. Illyra stepped closer, her eyes pleading. Please, mother, do not make him stay if he does not wish it. You cannot demand loyalty from someone who owes you nothing. The queen's gaze softened only slightly. Loyalty is not demanded, princess. It is seen, it is proven, and he has proven it. If we release him now, all that he has shown will be wasted. The Empire cannot risk that. He has shown the heart of humanity, and we must learn from it. Ryan looked at both of them. He did not feel trapped, though the weight of expectation pressed on him. Instead, he felt a quiet determination rising within. He had always served where duty called. Now duty had called to him not for orders but for a larger purpose. I will stay, he said finally, his voice steady. Not because you command it, but because I see what must be done. I will protect this palace, this family, and this empire if that is what is right. Queen Marielle's eyes held approval. Good, that is what I wished to hear. Illyra let out a soft breath of relief. She smiled, though a trace of worry lingered. Then you will fight beside us again as you have before? Ryan nodded. Yes, I will stand where I am needed. In the days that followed, Ryan became more than a soldier in the palace. He trained with the guards, offering strategies that combined human ingenuity with Veyran strength. He walked with the princess through the gardens, teaching her lessons of courage and care. He spoke with the queen in quiet chambers about duty, honor, and the strength that comes not from power alone, but from conviction. Nobles continued to whisper, some with fear, some with admiration. Yet even their plotting could not diminish the influence of his actions. Soldiers who had once doubted his presence now sought his advice. Citizens who had feared humans now spoke of him with respect. One evening, as the twin moons of Veyra rose over the city, Illyra found him standing alone on the balcony. He watched the glowing towers below, quiet and still. You have changed this palace, she said softly, coming to his side. Rian looked at her, his expression calm. I only do what is right. Others notice because they have not seen it before. She smiled faintly. You make it seem so simple. But you have made a difference. You have shown us something we had forgotten. He glanced at her. Humans learn through action. We do not always speak of courage or honor. We show it. That is how it spreads. Illyra's gaze met his. I am glad you are here. Ryan gave a small nod. I am glad to be here where I am needed most. At the same time, Queen Marielle observed the palace from her own chamber. She knew that the empire had changed, and that change had a face. A human soldier who had risked life for others without hesitation. She thought of his courage, his wisdom, and his simple but powerful sense of duty. He will not leave us, she whispered to herself, and perhaps that is the gift humanity brings to Veyra. Weeks passed, and life in the palace settled into a careful rhythm. Ryan continued to serve with quiet determination. His presence reassured the queen, inspired the princess, and challenged the empire to consider strength in ways it had never before. Even when new challenges arose, whether in politics, training, or threats beyond the city walls, Ryan was ready. His instincts were sharp, his courage unwavering. He had proven himself not only through action, but through the trust he inspired in others. And though he had once been a soldier from a distant world, now he was more than that. He was a symbol, a living example of what humanity could achieve when heart, mind, and duty were combined. One night, as the palace grew silent, Princess Illyra approached him once more. Do you ever wish to leave? She asked quietly. Rian looked at her, thinking of Earth, of his fellow soldiers, of home. Sometimes, he said, but duty is not always about where we want to be. It is about where we are needed. She nodded, understanding more than words could say. Then I am glad you are here. Queen Marielle watched them both from afar, a quiet satisfaction in her eyes. The human soldier who had shielded her daughter had now become an inseparable part of her empire. His courage, wisdom, and unwavering sense of duty had not only saved lives, but had changed the hearts of those around him. The empire of Veyra had learned something new. That strength was not only in power or wealth, but in the courage to protect, the loyalty to act, and the willingness to sacrifice for what is right. Rian had shown them all, without words, that humanity carried a light that could not be dimmed, and for Queen Marielle that light was too important to let go. In the quiet night, as the moons shone over the city, the palace stood strong. Within its walls, a human soldier kept watch, not as a stranger, not as a guest, but as a protector and a symbol. His story was now part of the Empire, and the Empire would never be the same again. And so Rian remained, a shield, a guide, and a reminder that courage and duty could cross worlds, change hearts, and inspire generations.